moving on just quickly, Lee, your second player in my list here. I'm wondering if it'll be the one that you've gone down in consecutive order.
Who knows? I tend to jump around quite a lot when I do these things with you. I'm going to go for Carlos Palacios.
Yes, that's the one.
I see the one. Okay. 20-year-old Chilean. He's already made his international debut for Chile, full international debut in November of last year, which shows a little bit of how highly he's thought of. What's interesting about Palacios is that he doesn't play for one of the traditional powerhouses in Chilean football, and this is kind of something that you see more in South America, I think, than in Europe. You can see talented players popping up at teams across the spectrum. So he's not somebody who you would naturally think of at a Colo Colo or a Universidad de Chile. He actually plays for Unión Española, who have been doing quite well in recent years, but he is by far, I think, the best young talent they've developed in recent times. At the moment, he is one who, when I just spoke about players quite often, is that they break through first team level. They're played out in wide areas, and that's something that we have seen from Palacios. He has played. He's right footed, but he's played on the right or he's played on the left. Or occasionally we will see him in what I think will become his preferred position, which is number 8. He's got a really interesting ability when you watch him play. He reminds me a lot of in his movement profiles. He makes similar movements in similar pockets to receive the ball that we saw from David Silva, who, when he was at his pomp at Manchester City, kind of takes up the same kind of areas in the half space. And when he receives the ball with his back to goal, he's really fluid with his movements, despite being quite tall. He's 180 centimeters. He's not a small player by any stretch of the imagination. So he is easy to pick out in the field. He's not a player who uses his smaller frame, if you like, to roll a defender and move past him. Instead, he's got this really nice balance to him. When he receives the ball, he'll move his hips and just turn left or right, comfortable going either way when defenders are at his back. Um, what I really like about him is that he's got this ability that you see occasionally in players, and not every creative player has this. And when you see it, it really stands out. When he receives the ball in the final third with space, he's got a really, really nice touch. Not everything looks clean when looks to make through balls or flick the ball through for his teammates or just interlink with them. But what he does is he shapes his foot really nicely, and it's something that you see from players who've obviously grown up playing on pitches that are not substandard, but not of the standard that you would see in a Premier League academy, for example. You know that the pitches have been rocky or bumpy or had puddles on them, or he's been playing on tar or on different clay surfaces, because he has an ability to shape his foot when he makes contact with the ball, just to put spin on it. And it's a way of finding solutions. Players who grow up playing on those pitches which are more difficult to play on, they find solutions to the way the ball bounces. And you see that with the way that he plays through balls sometimes. He puts an unusual spin on the ball that just kind of takes it away from a defender and finds the path of his teammate. And he displays that really well. It's something that makes him so interesting for me. I think that we're likely to see him move to Europe sooner rather than later, but I think he's a player who, for a possession oriented team, he would be really interesting. For example, if he was to go into PSV Eindhoven at the moment under Roger Schmidt, I think that Schmidt would really like his ability in those half spaces in the final third. And it's kind of an interesting to see exactly where he decides to go now, but he is a lovely player to watch.
Yeah, from the small clips that I was able to watch yesterday, what I could glean from that was that he's very good at receiving on the turn. He's very adept. He's not sort of square. He'll be, very open to those 180-degree movements when he receives the ball with his back to goal. And I think I mean, that obviously for obvious reasons that lends well to making a move to Europe. But I think a lot of the time people may look at South America and think, well, what would be a comparative league that he's currently playing in here? Because I think people know that the best leagues are probably Argentina and Brazil, but beyond that, how severe is the drop off? How competitive is effectively how competitive are Chilean teams going to be in the Copa Libertadores and Sudamericana? You know, um, essentially, where could you see him sort of hypothetically? Would it be a PSV who would move for a player of his stature? Coming from Chile, because with these types of players, I think sometimes you might see them move first to Argentina or first to Brazil before then moving to Europe. In the same way that players who perhaps come through in Scandinavia in Europe, who then go to a Belgium or a Holland or a Denmark or an Austria or a Netherlands, and then go to one of Europe's top five leagues. What is the likely pathway going to be, and sort of what comparative level would you put Chile's top division in?
I think you've hit the biggest question in recruitment directly on the head there. It's a lot of what I spend time thinking about for total football analysis and working on it are different models that allow us to take a player's output and to translate it, if you like, based on the current level, and kind of show where that level sits when you look at other markets. So it's something that can be quite tricky to do. I spent quite a lot of time last year trying to build a similar model, similar World Super League model to the kind of thing that Brentford are known to use. I built an algorithm and a model that I think worked quite well, but it can be quite time consuming for the upkeep for that. So it's something that I haven't revisited and plugged the data back in recently to see how it all looks. Also, as part of our consultancy, we work with a company called Analytics FC, who are quite well known in terms of their recruitment and data scouting and things like that. And a lot of clubs throughout Europe use them, and they've got their own tiers, if you like. So within their Transfer Lab platform, they give users the tiers that they use and how they split up leagues into different tiers to show this league in this tier is below this league in this tier. And it's just intended, they allow you to automatically, if you like, translate a player's metrics and data by clicking on a different tier to show how their data would likely look if they were to move to a higher tier. So it can be quite complicated, but quite often football transfers are complicated. I think Chilean football at the moment is in a period of downturn from where it was, 10, 15 years ago, when Chilean football was very much in the ascendancy, when Marcelo Bielsa was the Chilean national team manager, Jorge Sampaoli was the Universidad de Chile coach, and the football that they were playing in Chile was sensational, for want of a better word. The quality isn't where it was, but that's not to say there's a real drop-off. I think within South America, you have potentially Argentinian and Brazilian leagues are the top tier, if you like, but then Chile comes below that, along with, I think, Colombia and Uruguay. Then perhaps below that, you're looking at Paraguay or the Ecuadorian league as well. Some Ecuadorian teams like Independiente del Valle, they can be in a higher tier because they play such interesting football. So there's different ways to look at it. I think that you're right. There have been times gone by where Chilean players would automatically make the transfer to Argentina. It's quite an easy one in terms of cultural assimilation. There's a lot of similarities between Chilean culture and Argentine culture. The language is the same, so players would make that move quite easily. I think that we're likely to see Palacios make a move to Europe purely because his skill set lends itself so well to European football. And I do think it will be a Holland or a Belgium, that kind of level that you're looking at, that he'll go in at. But you could also make the argument that Spanish La Liga sides towards the bottom half should be looking at a player like Palacios, because his upside in terms of the cost profile that you're going to be paying in terms of transfer fee and wages, you have a real opportunity to get in at the ground floor to make a profit going forward.
I suppose the one who immediately comes to mind in that sense is Darwin Nunez, who's obviously at Benfica now,
Yeah,
but came to Europe with Almeria, who was in the Segunda
no,
Division in Spain. So obviously their second division. The upside that Almeria have had there is fantastic. They brought him in. Clearly they'd scouted him well. They knew that he physically would adapt well to Europe, and he scored a hatful of goals and has since gone on to get, I think it's 18 goal involvements in his first 30 games with Benfica. Not too many goals in Liga NOS, but he's got a lot of assists, and I very much like his movement, and especially how well he's done in the Europa League. So I think think, yeah, there's definitely upside there for a player like Carlos Palacios, for those bottom half La Liga sides, because it's a relatively inexpensive deal. It's a move which, as you say, with going to Argentina, coming to Spain, it would bring greater cultural and social assimilation, but to the same extent, it wouldn't be as much of a change as going to a Netherlands or a Belgium. So I think, yeah, it's one that certainly smart clubs should be looking at in the bottom half of La Liga. Ones who perhaps don't have a huge budget, but could do with a player who is, again, very robust, but also has that creative ability, that quality to receive on a half turn and change the shape of an attack and a transition.